Welcome back to Angel Citadel and our lounge. Um, Pull up a chair, pull up a couch, curl up on the floor, have a nice spot by the fire, grab a drink, and sit back and relax. We're going to chat RPGs today. I am Josh Wallace. I'm the keeper of the keys of Angel Citadel, the one and only Count Zero ASL. And you can find me all over the internet. Twitter, Facebook, MeWe. There's a link tree down in our Twitch information that's got all the different places you can find us. But mostly it's just shout wherever. We'll listen. And so yeah, that's me and my lovely partner, my better half, my best friend, Joanne.
Hi, everybody. I am Joanne Wallace, the Angel of Angel Citadel. Sorry, it's been a long day. And tonight we're going to talk about a Zine that I recently got my hands on and a few other things that have to do with TTRPGs. I'm glad you can make it and hope you enjoy joining us tonight.
So, this Zine, you were having me read this frantically the last couple of days to prep for today. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what struck your fancy with this particular Zine?
Well, to put it simply, it's made by my favorite people, the Drakes.
Sean and Navi Drake.
Yes. For anybody that doesn't know or rarely hangs out on Twitter, Sean and Navi Drake go by a couple of Drakes on itch.io, where they released a lot of Zines. They also finished a Kickstarter not too long ago for Court of Blades. They're some of our dearest friends.
Court of Blades is a Forged in the Dark adaptation of Blades in the Dark, and it deals with romantic skullduggery and politics and awesomeness. So we're excited to get that in our hands coming next year. And let's take a look at this Zine. What is this flowery thing that I'm looking at?
Well, this sign is the Villainous Volume 1, The Widow of Roses. It is basically about the villains.
So we've got a villain here. It looks like a lady, and the title is The Widow of Roses. So the cool thing, I guess I'll just start into this. The cool thing that in the past couple of days I've been thinking about this. The really awesome thing about this design is it's set up just exactly the way I would personally want all campaigns for any system to be set up ever. So those of you that have read our blog, those of you that have watched some of our videos and read our reviews and things like that, know that I'm a huge fan of like Numenera and Invisible Sun and games like that. And one of the big reasons for that is the way they set up their world building. Okay. World building in those games is a wonderful mix of specific and vague at the same time. It gives just enough detail for me to hook into and riff off of and just go, and not enough detail to where I feel like if I wander off the beaten path, I'm going to be constrained by that one person that comes back and says, but the fiction says this, and you're not keeping in line with the world. Yeah, I know it's my world anyway, and I get that, but it's nice to have that freedom to breathe. This particular Zine is set up that way. It is delightfully specific and vague at the same time. And I gotta give Navi and Drake props for this. Navi and Sean. Um, it's I love the balance. I love the fantastic way that they laid this out in a way where there's enough for me to play with and keep my players involved for a long time. And there's enough room for me to breathe and let them sandbox and do kind of what they want to do. So that was my hot take on it. What do you have?
Well, I like the fact that it can either be run as a complete campaign because it's a series of adventures that you can run as a campaign. But on this at the same time, it's also you can pull bits and pieces from it, like especially the way they did the adventure seeds. It's not you go here and you do the thing. You go here and you do the thing. It's roll a die. Here's the adventure seed.
The campaign feels very um, freeform that way, and not in a bad way either. The adventure seeds and the setting seeds are tight enough that players can draw connections between point A and point B and point C, or plot point A, plot point B, and plot point C on their own, but still feel free to kind of do like a side quest or whatever, or chase down a red herring or something. That's really an interesting and a very elegant design. I was very impressed.
I also like the fact that they've included stat blocks, particularly if you're running like a 5e game. There's NPCs and such that you can use, including castle lair actions.
Ooh, tell me about castle lair actions.
So one of the things is that you can. So I'm gonna pull from another group in the darkest house. When you're playing in the darkest house from Monty Cook Games, periodically you have a house action. Well, in this game, you can do what's called a lair action. Whereas the widow, which is one of the bad guys, the NPC BBEGs, uh, has a series of effects that they can use, similar to what a dragon would use. The only thing is they can't use the same effect twice in a row. They have to use different effects.
That's kind of cool. That's really kind of cool.
And one of my favorite effects is called grasping fog. And I don't need to tell you how bad that is, but basically it's very much it'll stick around until the widow dismisses it as a bonus action. Now, of course, there's negatives to it, but the whole concept of there's a fog and they're blind and the players can be blinded. And while I know that I'm not definitely not a anti-player GM. I'm very much a storyteller, but a lot of the players that we play with, it would be really interesting to see how they would play out their characters while they're blinded. For example, Fesnarax, who the first time we played with him was on Manapot's Happy Hour, and he was playing a Kenku, and he played the best Kenku I've ever seen. Right? I would love to see how he would react to a character that was blinded.
He or Asmo would be really good with that.
Well, Asmo's adorable.
Yeah, but they're both excellent role players.
Yes. They're both very excellent role players. I do get a giggle when I play with Asmo. The Holly character that he plays is just it's fun.
Oh, my dear, have a meat pie.
It'll all be all right in the morning.
So, is there anything about this that you didn't enjoy?
I'll be honest, the only thing that I didn't enjoy is a personal aesthetics. I'm not real fond. So there's one page where they did it where it's white on black text, and I'm not super fond on white on black text. But other than that aesthetic, yeah, no, there's really not. There's pretty much anything in here I could use easily and would enjoy using and would have fun with.
Fair enough. The only critique that I would have offered was I would have in the locations and in particular the castle, I would have given a map. Not so much like this town is found in this geographic area on this overland map. That's not what I'm talking about. But like a city map or something like that for a town, to where you could take that and drop it somewhere on your continent, right? And do that. That would have been a nice touch.
Yeah, but neither, to my knowledge, neither one of them are cartographers, and we all know how much you love making maps.
Well,
Maybe that's what you should do. You should, text them and say, "Hey, do you want a map?"
that's what I'm saying. So if you end up watching this, Sean Navi, and you decide you want a map for something and you're interested, just you happen to know a cartographer. So let's talk.
Yes, he loves his maps.
So that's the Widow of the Rose. It's what 60 pages.
Give or take. Yeah, it's the PDF is 66 pages. I would, if I discount the cover and the copyright and probably the title page, I'd put it about 64. But you know, before anybody says anything, yes, it's only 64 pages, but it's $5. I mean, you can't even go on to drive through and get something like this for $5.
Not only that, it's 64 pages and $5 of quality work. I would look. I'm not the biggest 5e fan in the world. All right, but I would absolutely recommend this for anybody that plays 5e. I love the style. I love the attention to detail, the picking the right details to give and the right ones to leave out. Um, I would say to any dungeon master, yeah, this is if you're going to publish a campaign or you're going to publish a long adventure path or something like that, this is the style to do it in. It's fantastic. So yeah.
So yeah, we'll stop gushing about that now because I could, yeah, I could definitely see me using it. So let's talk about our next topic.
Okay. So we have never really been people to shy away from hard topics or controversial topics, and we're not going to do that tonight either because that's the way we roll. So tonight we wanted to talk a little bit about min maxing and what it is, why people do it, what it looks like in different types of games, and why perhaps um, why people do it, and why it could be good and it could be a bad idea in different situations. So let's let's talk about first what min-maxing is when we say that. When I say min-maxing, Joanne, what do you think of?
People that focus on building their characters specific to certain tasks and neglecting others, specifically when they throw something as a dump stat because they don't need it to make their character powerful. Things like the barbarian that's stupid.
Fair enough. So I guess for myself, when I look at min-maxing, I tend to think about people that look at role playing like a math problem. And it's funny. I say that as an engineer, right? So math is kind of what I do. But as if they're trying to win a game by choosing the optimal values, the optimal settings, flipping the optimal switches or whatever, to where their character can overcome any situation without difficulty, without challenge, without setbacks, without if you think about telling stories, the stories that are interesting aren't ones where the hero wins in a walk. They're ones where the hero has to struggle to overcome, and often they have to learn about themselves, and often they have to change and things like that. And so when I'm looking at role playing, that's kind of what I anticipate. And when somebody goes around that, I tend to look at more as min-maxing. Very much the hero's journey. Yes, Nasser. I would totally agree with that.
And now, before people want to jump in and say that it's the video gamers, it's not always the video gamers. I've had a few young people do the min-maxing thing, but I've also had a lot of the older players where, especially people who focused on second and third edition, where it was Dungeons and Dragons, where it's a lot of math and you're limited in what you can do.
Now, what we're not trying to say in this stream is that you can't play that way. You can play any way you want, and it's okay. It's all role playing, and by all means, if that's how you want to approach it, go ahead. What we're going to talk a little bit about is some of the resultant theories, some of the resultant acts or actions that come from that philosophy as they pertain to different games, and why or why not those would be a good idea. So let's start with Dungeons and Dragons, because that's kind of where we started the thought. If you look at D&D 3, if you look at 3.5, if you look at even Pathfinder 1, they're very math-intensive games. Shadowrun is a very math-intensive game. And they're set up that way. They're very tactical in nature. They're very... how else would you describe that? They're very... unforgiving, I guess, in tit for tat between the GM and the players, and it's not necessarily that it's the GM against the players or there's any animosity there. It's more, if you look at and you play out the encounters the way the system has you set them up, if you don't at least have a modicum of, okay, I'm gonna do this the way the system intends for me to do this, you're gonna die, and that's just the way it's set up.
Well, fun fact though is that even if you min max in Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder 1, um, there's still a high percentage chance of you dying because it's all going to come down to dice rolls. I mean, sure, maxing out your dex increases your reflexes and gives you a higher chance to dodge, but at the end, it's going to come down to rolling the dice.
It's a single d20, it's a normal distribution, and the best you can hope for is shifting that by shifting the constant on the scale. So with a d20 system, right, you're rolling a d20 and you're adding something. You're adding a number of skill ranks or whatever in perception, right? And that's a static number that doesn't change roll to roll unless you put ranks in it as you level up. So you're always at, let's say your skill is +5. Whether you roll a 6 or whether you roll a 13, you're always shifting it by 5. So the actual distribution doesn't change, it just moves up.
Yep. Oh, the next thing I want to bring up, and this also has to do partially with session 0, which we've talked about previously, especially on the blog. One of the big things that I've noticed a complaint about is players bringing min-maxed characters to the table. Now, I understand that for some GMs that's frustrating, but the easiest way to avoid such frustration is to have a discussion before the character creation. We're going to play it this way. We're going to play it that way. If everybody at the table is min-maxing and they're meshing their characters to where they cover the other character's weak spots, like, for example, a character that's a tough brute and a character that's the socialite are working together, then it's not so bad. But it also comes down to the GM's actions. There have been a couple of GMs that I've played with that are, quite frankly, not very good at balance. They will tend to focus more on combat over social. So when you play a social character, create a social character, you're not going to have as much to do as if you had created a combat character. And again, this comes back to session 0. Discuss what you want to play and the kind of game you want to see, and that'll reduce your frustrations, especially if you want to be a min-maxer. I've built min-max characters. I've enjoyed playing min-max characters. I have done oddball min-max characters. Josh has done oddball min-max characters.
Those are the best.
So in no way, shape, or form will we say, oh, min-max is bad. No, it's not. It's a way to play the game. Just make sure that everybody at the table's on board with that play style.
That's a really good point. The thing that we harp on the most anymore when it comes to GMing and GMing tips is communication, right? Communicate with your players and have that be an ongoing communication. Just in session 0, but even after sessions, and ask questions. What did you like about the session today? What didn't you like about the session today? Is there something that we can do different, or is there something else that you want to see? And then take that feedback and turn it around back into the game, so that you express your creativity, but you do it in such a way that everybody's hitting the notes that they want to hit. And that ties in real well with that whole party building mentality, because you want to make sure that if if you're throwing a bunch of combat or whatever, and the fighter's happy, but the bard isn't because they're not being able to use the energy that they put into developing all these social skills, then you need to sit back and look at the kinds of encounters that you're doing and saying, okay, maybe I need to dial down the combat just a little bit and bring up social encounters or political encounters or something different, something that the bard can participate in. So yeah, you can absolutely not just be a min maxer through um, finding numbers on a page or optimizing numbers on a page. You can do it through concept too, like you're talking about, Nasser, um, in how you deal with the choices that your character's making in game, and how you stack that in your favor, because that's really what min maxing is. You're stacking things in your favor. A nat one is still a nat one.
And yeah, like Josh was saying, but I will bring it back to the fact that dealing with NPC characters and discovering powerful artifacts is going to come back on the DM. It's going to be up to them to make sure they provide such opportunities. If they don't, then you're going to kind of wash. And I've played with some DMs that do kind of wash in that interaction. They don't always bring NPC characters into play. I've had a couple that were like, "Oh yeah, well this is uh, just some dude. I don't have a name for him. Here he is." Or you're in a tavern. Well, who else in the tavern? Oh, just people. And if that's all you've got, then you can't do anything with it. And I think I've wandered way off topic.
It's the lounge. What do you want? So, I think we've talked a little bit now about min maxing in math games. Do you ever see that in more narrative games?
Yes, I've seen it a couple of times in Cipher System where they've min maxed. Particularly people that are playing like nanos or glaives in the Numenera system specifically, they'll min max and they'll max out like their int and
Mhm.
might, but they'll leave their speed alone or leave it low. Or you'll get the glaive that's like strength and speed and nothing else. And that it's kind of sad because it really shouldn't come down. I know that in combat, it's very important to have those skills, but that kind of limits them outside of combat.
I agree. The thing about games like Numenera and the Cipher system is in the books. They specifically state that those games are not about combat. One of the points that Monty Cook made in Numenera is to reward the thing that you want people to do. And so, in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, right? When you're looking at a character, how does a character level up? The character levels up either, well, now through milestones, but they didn't used to do that back in second and third edition. Um, they leveled up strictly through experience points, and the way you get experience points is by killing monsters. And so it was a very combat focused game, which is fine. It's not. I'm not suggesting that that's bad, but you get what you pay for, right? You get what you invest that time in. And so what he did with Numenera and what he did with Cypher is he gave experience and he provided that advancement currency for things that weren't combat, and kind of de-emphasized that as a solution, not said, no, you can't do this, because there's a giant combat chapter in the middle of the book, but that this is not the only way to do it, and that it may not even be the most interesting way to do it to solve problems, and that you should try and explore other options.
I think the only game that I've seen in the many games, and say enough minis. The only game that I haven't really seen a lot of min maxing in is in games like Invisible Sun. You can't really min max an Invisible Sun character. There are too many requirements. Like for your spells, you need sorceries. For your perception, you need intellect. You can't just, okay, I'm going to throw everything in this spot or everything in this spot. It's very much you need a little bit of everything. But then again, that's probably why it takes forever to actually get anywhere.
Well, and that's, it depends on the kind of game, right? So um, it is, in my opinion, a very difficult thing to do one shots in Numenera, or excuse me, in Invisible Sun. And the reason for that is exactly what you describe. The fact that when you're building your initial character and when you're developing your ongoing character concept, you have to play the long game because everything's necessary. And you cannot spend it all at once. There's no way to do it. Um, the other one that does that fairly well, that does allow for one shots, but also lets you play that long game, is Blades in the Dark. And the way it does experience spends tends to de-emphasize strictly combat and play up developing your hideout, your crib, your home, whatever, your gang, your influence, your whatever, right? And do that in parallel with your own character advancement, because you can't survive on your own. You're grinning at me.
Yes, I do that.
I don't have anything to say. You go. No, you go. Um,
Well, some of us are tired.
Fair enough, but I just got done streaming a game too, so.
I know, I was there.
um, for those of you that don't know, we just got done with a 3-hour session of Visible Sun, and it was session 1. And what I learned today was that there is a vast difference between running a game for a stream and running a home game in stress level and oh my gosh, so yeah, I'm a little fried today, but that's all right. We're gonna push through it. We're gonna have fun anyway.
That's what we do.
So min-maxing in narrative games can be done. The more narrative those get, though, the less it's really possible. And I would probably argue that when you get right down to it, if unless you absolutely break the game, in games like Fate, you can't really min max a character because the GM always has outs. The way they control the fate point economy, the way they handle compels and things like that. There are always ways to create narratively interesting situations to put the players back on their heels and to give them hard and interesting choices, narratively interesting choices.
This is true. I mean, the other game that I'm looking forward to is Everway, in seeing how they handle the character, um, and the if you can min max there.
There's some numbers to that from what I can see, but yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that myself. Those of you that don't know, Everway is a an old game now. It's coming out in a silver anniversary edition, so 20 years. It just got done with a Kickstarter, and Everway is a game that is controlled by a tarot deck that is used for narrative context and narrative draws to determine action resolution. And so I haven't actually played it yet, but I'm really, really interested to see how this works. It was written by Jonathan Tweet a while back of D&D fame, and it's one of the more unique games that we've run across with regards to mechanics like that. So, yeah, like Joanne said, I'm pretty excited about this one. I'll be looking forward to seeing how that works.
Oh, that's another game that's kind of hard to min max with is Iron Sworn.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Why is that?
Well, one of the things that causes so with Dungeons and Dragons, you have a static number, uh, and with Cipher System, you've got a stat. You've typically got a target number that varies based on what you can throw at it. With Iron Sworn, the numbers fluctuate. You can have bonuses or you can have negatives, and the negatives aren't exactly light. Iron Sworn can be a very dark game.
Not only that, the target numbers are variable. So when you the mechanic for Iron Sworn is when you roll for an action, you're rolling two d10s and a d6. Your d6 is your action dice, and it gets static stuff added to it, but it's then compared against the values on the two d10s. And if it doesn't beat any of them, you fail. If you beat one of them, it's a weak success. And if you beat both of them, it's a strong success. So every roll, the potential of those target numbers changes, and it makes for a really non-static type of a game where min maxing it is tough if you do it at all.
Also, don't forget the supply and your the supply, health, and spirit you have to keep track of, and the advancement stuff, whether or not you get a +1 or a +2 or -1, -2.
Yep. So yeah, absolutely, and again, this is something that we'll harp on every chance we get on Angel Citadel and on this stream is absolutely take the opportunity when you can to play different systems and look and try and understand why they're set up the way they're set up, and what you can learn about role playing in general from the system itself.
Yeah, the momentum track. I had to go look up what the name of it was because I couldn't remember. So one of the things that with Iron Sworn has that I haven't seen in other games is something called the momentum track. And basically it's when you take action, you can build or lose momentum. And then you use the momentum to either increase or decrease uh, your next action.
And it changes the types of successes that you get. Um, so you can negate some rolls if your momentum is high enough.
Yeah, you can use momentum to basically buy a success, like turning a complete miss into a weak hit.
Which is always useful. And that's another one. When you start looking at games that use a yes and philosophy or a no and philosophy, like Iron Sworn or like Blades in the Dark or something like that, um, where you get these weak successes or partial successes or whatever, and so maybe you accomplish what it was you were trying to do, but there's some sort of unforeseen complication uh, to what you did or how you did it or something, that makes your next action or actions more narratively interesting. um, it becomes harder to min max that as well, because that's the GM's opportunity to contribute to the story. The players saying, okay, I do this. Well, okay, yeah, you did that because you got a partial success or you got a weak success or something like that, but also this is what else happens.
Yeah, I'm quite fond of the failing up and the devil's bargains you can get with Blades in the Dark. Uh, and because Blades in the Dark offers such things, you don't feel the need to make superpowered characters because, well, one, it's a little harder because Blades in the Dark, like Iron Sworn, are fiction first. But Blades in the Dark also offers a lot of tools to where you don't feel the need of, oh my god, I've got to make this superpowered character, otherwise I'm going to die, or I'm going to suck, or I'm not going to be able to do anything.
Like, for instance, flashbacks. Oh my goodness, it's the most amazing mechanic I've ever seen. Where you're assumed competent, right? And so you go and you're doing the thing or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and oh my goodness, there's this thing that I should have done that I should have or that I didn't plan for. Wait a minute, you're a professional, you're a career criminal. You would have remembered that. So let's do a quick flashback, and you're going to go back and you're going to do the thing. And then we're going to fast forward back to where you were in the story now. And all of a sudden the thing's done. Like you melted a lock or something like that so that you could open a door later. And you started doing it, you realized you didn't do that. Well, no, I'm going to pay for a flashback in stress. And I'm going to say that last night when I was scoping this building out, I came out with with a bottle of acid and dumped it in the lock. And I do my rolls or whatever, and that worked. And so now I come back forward in time to right now when I'm doing the thing, and that lock's already popped for me. That's that kind of a mechanic that assumes, hey, you're competent, you're professional, and you would have thought of this stuff. Even if the player doesn't, the character would have, is really powerful narratively, and is a really cool way to handle it.
So we are down to the last 14 minutes. So I'm going to open it up. Do you guys have any questions for us? Do y'all want to open any discourse? Because we'll sit here and keep rambling, but I wanted to make sure you guys had a chance to talk. And don't be afraid. Nobody's going to laugh at you, make fun of you, or think you're not smart. That sounds like a fun game, something I would enjoy playing then. Because let's just say Roll20 Dice hate us.
Ain't that the truth?
On the other hand, if I get to play with my real dice, I've got a set of metal dice that absolutely adore me.
So yeah, it like Joanne said, if you've got questions or whatever, please drop those in chat. We'd love to address those. That's what this stream is for. I mean, yeah, she and I can sit here and pontificate and jaw about tabletop role playing games and stuff like that, but that's not really what we want to do. We want to answer your questions. If you've got something in a home game that you're struggling with, or things that you want to understand how to do better, or want a different perspective on, that's what this is for. So please, by all means, you're not going to bother us. Just go ahead and spit it out.
Yeah, seventh. So since Nasser mentioned it, I went over to the Seventh Sea website. They offer a free quick start guide. So I went and grabbed that, and yeah, I'm scanning through it, and it looks kind of interesting. I might be, I might, trot out some dice and play it. Make Josh play it with me.
Well, because that's what Josh does is he plays the things with you.
So let's see. We've talked about Drake and Navi.
We've talked about Drake and Navi. We've talked about some min-maxing.
We've talked about what else? We talked about min-maxing. We talked about some of the games that we've played. Oh, speaking of flashbacks, we could talk about the flashback that you used the last time we played Blades in the Dark. So, the last time we played Blades in the Dark, we were being DM'd by a friend of ours, and we had to infiltrate a party. So, we made plans and we checked out the place and we did all the heist stuff that you typically do. And then we realized that the party was invitation only. So Josh decided that his character would have flashed back to getting the two of us forged invitations to get us in. Which made for a really interesting thing, because then we were able to get in and do the task. Versus, having to bribe the guards or try to sneak in and hope that we pass like you would have had to done with D&D.
So yeah, that's and look who showed up. Drake's here. Sean's here.
Well, he's late.
You missed it, buddy.
Navi's the important one anyways.
Now, we were talking about, at the beginning of the stream, we were talking about the Widow of Roses. And so, yeah, go back, check it out. Anyway, by the way, awesome. We loved it. So, so yeah, with min maxing, we've talked a little bit about the mechanics of it and why people might do it. What what are some downsides to doing that? I think if you're focused on treating role playing as a math problem to be solved, you miss um, you miss some opportunities where you instead of doing things like failing forward, like we talked about with Blades in the Dark or Fate or something like that, right? Um, you it's a hard fail, and I think that um, narratively that is probably less interesting than a lot of other ways to handle that situation. And so, if you can get your players in a session zero or through some guidance at the end of session chats, um, to veer away from that philosophy, that way of thinking, um, I think you're going to end up with a lot more of a dynamic story and a dynamic group that way.
Yeah, it's you don't remember the nat 20 you rolled. You remember the feelings associated to it. You remember the story you were able to tell.
You don't remember the exploding sixes. You remember the romance you were able to foster.
Yeah, that's for that story. Head on over to Fajuk Enterprises on YouTube. Um, Josh is getting the link now, but that's where we talked with Fook about the game and how our relationship started and came about um, 10 years ago. Well, when he gets it up.
Yeah, it's not up yet.
But our Cypher System interview is there.
That it is. So yeah, that was the start of our friendship was me rolling a single six-sided die way too many times in a social interaction with somebody who probably should have shot me.
Exactly. And yes, Nasser, exactly. That's what we've always felt. You don't really have a good story unless the hero is relatable. And the hero needs to learn during the thing. There needs to be growth. There needs to be change. And if you're approaching it as just numbers on a page, then you don't have that growth and that change. And I think you really miss out on some really great stories not doing that. Yeah, it was wild. So 10 years ago, yes, that many years ago, I posted on Reddit as a new GM looking for a Shadowrun group. And lovely Count Zero ASL uh, sent in a message saying that he was interested. So we set up a time and we started to playing, and I had pulled out one of my old player characters to run as an NPC.
Now, my character was a Shadowrun gunslinger, and his team had been contracted by a wealthy hospital owner to go and retrieve her niece from a vampire that had kidnapped her and was holding her in his mansion. And because she'd opted to use deniable assets or shadow runners, her chief of security, which was Joanne's player character, her old player character, was mightily offended. Like, you can't give this job to me. I'm on your payroll and I'm the best there is, and you're going to give it to these chumps. What's wrong with you? So she went and did it anyway. She brought, her fire team, and there were two teams doing this job, and we met up at the site and had no idea that the other was there. And we were severely outgunned. And so I decided that rather than try and go down in a blaze of glory or whatever and maybe get the niece killed, that I would try and convince this chief of security, Samantha, to work with us. Now, as a gunslinger, I was not the talkie-talkie, but I wasn't about to let the rest of the party do it because they were even more uncouth than I was. And I had a single dice to throw for persuasion. Now, at Shadowrun, 5 or a 6 is a success, and if you roll a 6, you get to use exploding dice, and you pick up the die and you re-roll it again, and you add that to the total of successes. So I rolled a 6, and then I picked it up and I rolled another one, and I picked it up and I rolled another one. And how many 6s did I roll?
I don't remember.
Something like 8 or 10. I don't know.
Something like that.
It was stupid. It was absolutely crazy. And so, based on how successful this was, she ended up, letting us team up, and we rescued the daughter. And as we were leaving, I opted to look at it as an opportunity to build a contact, because in Shadowrun, that's what you do. It's as much about what you can do and who you know, or excuse me, it's as much about who you know as what you can do. And so, I'm thinking, hey, a chief of security of a rich person, that'd be a kind of nice contact to have. So I decided that I was going to ask this individual out for coffee. And I rolled a 6. And then I rolled another one. And, it didn't start out, Sean, that she fell in love with me because of that. But over the course of the next, 8 or 10 months of play, and me cultivating that contact in game, to where it was useful during downtime for information and weapon resources and things like that, they did actually develop a relationship. And when the campaign ended, they got married and had kids. And then in a later campaign, those kids came back as NPCs and interacted with a new player character that I was playing at the time. So that's another story, but we'll say that one is the one that involves me breaking down in tears, sobbing during a role-playing session. And that doesn't happen very often. But that was, getting back to Nasser's comment about the fun in storytelling is the struggle. When you can sink yourself into a character because you don't care about the numbers much, and you can get down to where you can feel their hurt and you're devastated when they're devastated, man, that's the good stuff.
Yeah, only rarely did my Shadowrun stories have woe. I felt that the real world was woeish enough without adding woe. Besides, it was always all about the C12.
That was not me.
So, no, that wasn't you.
So yeah, that's there's lots of little things like that, but when you spend time making characters that are flawed, um, instead of trying to maximize every single little thing on a character sheet, you find some really powerful stories, and we've got some really interesting memories now that mean things to us both personally and in the context of role playing. Um, and they're stuff that we'll remember forever because that story was so powerful. And it happened not because they were the best at everything, but because they overcame something in spite of it.
All right. I think it's now 9 o'clock, so we will wrap it up here. I hope you guys enjoyed the lounge. And I look forward to talking to you guys next Sunday at 8 p.m. EST.
In between now and then, if you want to join us on Friday, we're going to hang out and play some more Halo. And you can watch as I suck at killing Covenant.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, as I try and remember how to kill Covenant. And then if you want to, if you can't wait for more Invisible Sun that we had today, which was a blast, by the way. Next week, Manapot Studios has a hole in the world at 4:30 Eastern. Go check it out. I'll probably be there myself, and it's every Sunday is Invisible Sunday, and we have a blast doing it. So, and then come back like Joanne said next Sunday at 8 p.m. and we'll be back here chatting more about role playing stuff. Bring your questions, bring a drink, bring a bowl of ice cream, pull up a chair, enjoy. We'd love to have you back, and yeah, just it's nice hanging out with friends and being able to talk about this stuff. Just shoot the breeze. Feel free to chase us around the internet at angelcitadel.com, on Twitter, on Discord. We've got a link tree down below in the info section here on Twitch. We have a Patreon. We have a Ko-fi. If you like what we do, support us. We've got some subscriber specific stuff now out on Patreon that you can check out. And until next week, happy gaming.
Happy gaming. Well, only if you want to be. I mean, do you have something else I can talk about? Because I will do that. Have a good night.